Welcome, everyone. I'm Ann Turlock, an associate professor in the Wisconsin School of Business. Very excited to be hosting this event today. Planet, People, Profit, Careers in Corporate Sustainability, co-hosted between the Wisconsin School of Business and the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. First, a teeny bit of housekeeping before we get started. We'll have panelists present first and then move into Q&A. You can add your questions for panelists to the Q&A feature. We have had a few excellent questions pre-submitted that we will start with, and we will use those first, and then we will go to your questions that you are submitting via the Q&A feature. There's also an evaluation survey at the end, and we'll add the link to the chat. It will also pop up in your browser when you leave the session. Please fill it out. It'll help us shape events like these for the future. All right, on to our main event here. The plan is that I'll briefly introduce our panelists and then let them present. At around 6 p.m., we'll start with the pre-submitted questions from the audience. Lauren will be monitoring the chat. So I am super excited and very pleased to have some incredible alumni from UW-Madison here with us tonight. We have Alexandra Russen, who received her BA in International Studies and Environmental Studies with a Global Health Certificate. And she is the Senior Associate for Sustainability with PricewaterhouseCoopers. We have Cindy Boland, earned a BA in Finance, Investment, and Banking, and her BA in Spanish, and currently is the Chief Mindfulness Officer at River Water Partners. Then we have Ben Mand, who earned his BBA in Finance, Investment, and Banking, and Accounting, and International Business, and is the Chief Executive Officer of Harmless Harvest, I shouldn't practice. All right, we also have Kim Blundy, who earned her MS in Conservation Biology and Sustainable Development and is the Foundry Operations Manager of Caterpillar. Finally, we have Aaron Magnus, who earned his BBA in Marketing and Management and is the Chief Marketing Officer at Thistle. And I will herewith pass it on to Aaron to take it away.
Great. Really excited to be here and join you all. So thank you for the opportunity. I'll keep this very fast because I know there's a lot more interesting people talking later. But if we go to the next slide, just really quick about myself. You know, why should you care? I don't know if you should, but a little bit about me. I've been a long-time marketer and really focused on consumer. And with experience both on enterprise, startup, unicorns, exits, flameouts, all things that have to do with, just driving consumer demand. So a lot of experience in a different number of areas. And I've been here at Thistle now for 4 years. And if we go to the next slide, a little bit about Thistle. We're a plant-based meal subscription service. We're on a mission to help people get and stay healthy while improving the sustainability of our food system. And I think that's such a key component. Really quick story on the why we're even here. We have a husband and wife co-founding team. Ash, he comes from a family of doctors who have been fighting early onset health diseases forever and saying, if we really want to, make an impact here, people should eat more plants and eat less meat. And then Shiri, she has her PhD in environmental sciences, studying the impact of agriculture on climate change. And her whole point is, that's cute, you want to recycle and drive a Tesla, but if you really want to make an impact on the climate, you should eat less meat. So if we go to the next, the main thing is it's our service is all about plants first and foremost. But no one cares if it doesn't taste delicious. So we have to focus on that. And by doing that and building this business, we're about 10 years in, over $100 million in revenue. Big focus of ours is improving the community. So make sure we pay living wages to all of our drivers and people in our manufacturing facilities. So for us, that equates to a minimum wage of $20 across our entire organization. And then we also understand the importance of how food is so unique and special to every one of us. So how do we make sure we're making menus that are adventurous and vivacious and make you feel excited about eating more plants? From the next slide, a little bit, talking about, career paths. I think the main thing is, as we're all figuring out what we want to do when we grow up, and I think many of us still are, there's a lot of upsides from working in large organizations. I got my start, I actually moved to San Francisco out here in August 01 for a job at Bloomberg. I was going into finance, going into sales, let's be clear. Finance and accounting didn't work for me, but in doing that, after September 11th happened, they canceled that whole incoming class. So what ended up happening is I'm working at bars, trying to scramble and get a job, and I lucked in through a connection I made, which sort of plays into suggestions around. And it was at Williams-Sonoma, where I really got to learn the build of the startup and the excitement that was really exciting there. So enterprise, you really learn how to have functions and controls and organization. But then I think if you really want to make impact, you go into startups, and then you really put it into plans. And then, part of the suggestions is, if to excel and find opportunities to succeed, you should always be more curious than everyone else and put yourself out there. I have a big belief that we all have so much luck that plays into our lives, but lucky people put themselves in position to be lucky. So always say yes, take the opportunity to meet that next person, which is really what started me on my career a couple times. Random friends saying, oh, you should meet, this person. And by saying yes, it really helped me in my career and development, because in the end, we all have to bet on ourselves. One thing I've learned going into the next slide about sustainability, everybody loves sustainability and they want to be sustainable and they want to do everything they can, but they don't want to pay a penny for it. So I think the key component is how do we think for the consumer, the end user, or make them understand that this is a feature, not a bug. So part of the process of whatever you're doing is, you're less selling, but helping them understand of why this is the right choice. At Thistle, I'm excited to be able to say that, if we grew into the multinational world dominated company, that'd actually be really good for the planet, because that means everyone would be eating less meat, right? And so if you can find yourself in a position to be passionate about something that allows you to really lean into the baseline product being about sustainability, you don't have to try to sell it, because again, people don't want to pay for it. So thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Manns. I'm the CEO of Harmless Harvest. You can actually go to the next slide. I'll take the first two slides just to give you a sense of the company. For those of you who don't know, we're most well known for our coconut water. So we do a cold filtration process, only use Nam Hom coconuts out of Thailand. And what results is a really amazing coconut water. When I took over the company, we were all coconut water. One of the mandates I had was zero waste. We were processing 40 million coconuts, taking the water out, and then sending 40 million coconuts to the landfill, which A, is not very harmless, and B, not very profitable, because the company was not profitable. So we started making products. The challenge to the innovation team is, what are you going to do with it? And so we launched yogurt. It's now the #1 velocity yogurt in grocery. And so that's a picture of our yogurt as well. So we're most well known for those two things. You can go to the next page. So from a sustainability standpoint, it's kind of in our name, Harmless Harvest. We are a very hands-on business. I've got 28 agronomists working in Thailand with farmers. So here are just a few of the things that we've done. So when I joined, I said, I mandated zero waste. We're now using about 75% of our coconuts that are upcycled. So we're scooping the coconut meat. We're making smoothies, yogurts, coconut water with pulp as a good example, all sorts of things with that. 50% greenhouse gas reduction was the mandate by 2025. That is not easy, I will tell you, but 75% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from farming, the foliage dropping into the canals and decomposing. So we work with farmers on waste management, using it in the compost, and the other is not using the coconut. So using that whole coconut, using the husk for things like biochar and compost and things like that really drive an impact. Sustainable packaging. All of our bottles are made from 100% recycled PET, so no virgin plastic. Great from an environment, as well as then addresses the waste issue, and then fair for life. The one thing I would say is we did get ROC certified, so regenerative organic certification, as of November. So that makes us one of the leading bigger companies to be regenerative organic certified. You go to the next page. So a little bit about my background. I'm from Fond du Lac, east of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. I grew up on an old dairy farm. I am a first-generation college student. I would say when I started out, I was very naive, but resourceful. I had to work very hard as a kid, had lots of chores and stuff like that. So I was not immune to hard work. I graduated in 1997. And what I would say is, while there, just take advantage of all the time and just pursue internships, lots of different experiences. And that's kind of a theme, I would say, just throughout my career, is just keep trying new and different things. It will make you stronger down the road. Went into consulting. I thought this was great exposure to a range of businesses and functions. It helped me understand not only the different faculties and functions. I did finance and accounting because I felt that was a good foundation for business. Frankly, I'm more of a strategist, marketer, and things like that, but I'm quite good with numbers. And so having that discipline I felt was going to be good. Continued in consulting on the West Coast then. So I did very quantitative approach to consulting, and then I did very creative strategy approach to consulting, which was really nice bookends for me. Went back and got my my MBA. And so, what I would say is, got great experience there, and really, was able to kind of round out my experiences. From there, went to J&J, worked on a global drug launch. That was my opportunity to start doing more international experience. And then I went to General Mills, and this is where I really found my true passion. So a couple things. One, really learned how to effectively run a business and a P&L. That has served me incredibly well. I had broad impact into health and wellness. So I'm very passionate about, you are what you eat. And, when you're on Progresso Soup, great brand, reach about 30% of households in a year. But when you do a silent reduction in sodium, when you take out MSG, when you do those types of things, you start having a small impact on a lot of people. And that was the kind of thing I would do on various businesses I had there. But then I went to Plum. And so to me, food and beverage is where I started to find my passion, and a couple of things. One is everybody can relate to food and beverage, and I love that because everybody has to eat and drink, so everybody has to, can have a point of view on it. And food and beverage is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, right? So, if we can do better there, most, I think I saw a stat like, more than a $500 billion is wasted in food and beverage each year. So, big contributor. How can you really have an impact? And when I went to Plum Organics, it was taking that impact I want to have from a health and wellness, from an environment standpoint. And now how can I take something small that is inherently great, and how do you start scaling it? So attacking these types of issues from a totally different angle. And so, one of the things that, I think is really important when thinking about purpose-driven businesses is it is still a business, right? So you need strong business results in order to drive even more and more impact. And if you only focus on impact and you don't have a strong business, that's a nonprofit, and eventually that business goes away. So you really need to have them both working together. And that would be one of my key, pieces of advice. And then from there, I went to Harmless Harvest, and I've been with Harmless Harvest for 5.5 years, really turned around the business, key focuses on zero waste, driving efficiency, but scaling this brand, using that entire coconut. We did just sell to Danone last year, and we achieved regenerative organic. I'd say one final thing I would say is, when you think about, how do you drive personal success, what I would say is, certainly you need to have tenacity and take some risks, but get as many different experiences as you possibly can. And, I saw firsthand family members who worked paycheck to paycheck and did not enjoy what they're doing. And my philosophy has always been to love what I do. So I'm very passionate, and I would encourage you to find areas of passion. It doesn't feel like work then. Be flexible, nimble, try different things, get a variety of experiences. Have a sense, over time, just keep recalibrating where you're trying to go. But the variety of experiences really helps you get the types of things to make you successful later in your career, and just be accountable to results. That's all I have as a lead-in.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Hi, everybody. I'm Alexandra Rossin. I graduated from UW-Madison back in 2020. So relatively new in my career, but I do have a couple years under my belt in the sustainability world. I'm currently a senior associate at PwC Sustainability Services Practices. Mostly I focus on reporting and creating goals with companies. I've worked all across the board in terms of industries, and I'm really now focusing more on some of the upcoming regulations. There's a lot in the EU around something called CSRD, and some actually that are coming in the US. There's like a new California bill that is going to mandate some greenhouse gases, and new regulations coming out in New York, Illinois, and more like that. So I've been really focused on preparing companies for impending regulations around sustainability and greenhouse gas emissions reporting. So it's been really interesting to see the landscape of that grow as I've been in this space. I've been at PwC for 2 years now, which has been awesome to, this early in my career, having so much exposure to different companies of all shapes and sizes. But before that, I was in industry at a company called TDS, leading their ESG strategy and reporting section of their company. Previously to that, I was back in Madison interning at the UW Credit Union as their sustainability intern. And then before that, with my first internship being as a CSR intern, where that term is kind of, I feel like, outdated now at Grant Thornton. I do not have a business background. I was in the Nelson Institute when I was in Madison, and being able to work at a company and in businesses has given me a whole new eye into sustainability and how business is really the driver of what is going to make sustainability in the future. So I'm really grateful to have had the opportunities to, work in business, work at a company like PwC that really, I can get a lot of exposure to businesses and all that. So thank you, guys.
Hi, I'm Cindy Bolin, and I'm currently with Riverwater Partners. Next slide, please. So Riverwater is a registered investment advisor based in Milwaukee. We were founded in 2016, and we offer 2 ESG-focused long-only equity strategies to clients. We are a certified B Corp, and we did that to demonstrate alignment of our corporate culture with what we hope to see in the businesses in which we invest. And so as we are looking for companies to put into our portfolios, we're looking for companies that bring value to society by nature of the value of the product or services they bring to the table, also by the lack of harm their operations bring to society, and then, as importantly, the return on their investment of the human, physical, and financial capital they're using for their business, because that is what, generates their profitability over time, which is important for sustainable businesses. And so we're employee owned, and our mission is to make the world a better place by growing wealth through sustainable investing. And we believe that those are not mutually exclusive, but rather very tied together. Next slide, please. So a little bit about my journey. So I'm also, as you know, a graduate with a business degree in finance and a bachelor's of arts in Spanish. And I began my career at M&I, which now is BMO Harris. And I started out in the trust and investment company. And interestingly, I was a management trainee as a place where people often start in these larger organizations. And so, if someone went on maternity leave, I would take on their role for 3 or 6 months and learn a little bit and help them out. And then I'd be moved to another role because someone left the company or whatever. But the whole idea was to learn, and then ultimately would be placed in a permanent role. And the permanent role I was given was to act as a liaison between the trust company and the data services company owned by M&I at the time. So the data services company was the software that ran all of the trust and investment business. And I didn't have any experience with technology or software, but I learned at least a lot about the terminology and how it works. And that became important because when I expressed an interest in joining the investment team, I was able to join, and I was our technology analyst because I had that background. And so that is what helped me get my start in the investment business. I left M&I and went to Baird, and I had a similar role there. And that was a really important step in my career, because M&I was one of those companies you often went to and never left. People would spend their entire careers there because it was a really great company. So for me to go and move to a company like Baird, which is an amazing company, best company I worked for, was really an important step in my career to prove that I was capable of moving on to another organization. A few years in, I actually retired from Baird to stay at home and raise my children, to focus on raising my children. And I called it retirement because the investment business is very hard to get into. And I really felt that if I left, I would likely never be able to come back. And so I called it retirement for a reason. And as my reason for being at home started walking out the door more and more, I kind of needed some other things to do. So I wrote and illustrated and published a couple of children's books. And that was an important part of my journey too, because it gave me an entrepreneurial experience. And it also allowed me to know that I could self-teach myself something. I had never had any education in writing or illustrating or publishing books, but I did it, and I still sell some books today. But that was a really important step in my career as well. And then I took on a couple of part-time roles, which gave me a look at sustainable investing, which was really foreign to me because, you know, back when I started my career, it wasn't a thing. And so I learned a little bit about it. And then when my friend Adam founded Riverwater, he came to me and said, I'm starting this responsible investing firm, and I think you would be a great fit. And so I joined Riverwater Partners, and I'm the Chief Mindfulness Officer, but my more official title is the Director of Responsible Investing. And so one thing I would leave with you is a Steve Jobs quote, which is really impactful for me, which is, you can't really connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to sort of trust that these dots are going to somehow connect in your future. So as you go through your careers and you take on these different roles, just take something from every single one of them. I learned about technology in that one role, and that helped me become a tech analyst. And then, you know, all these different steps have just been part of who my career has made me. And so the next slide, please. I will end with, this is my whole team. And so Adam is also a graduate of UW-Madison. He's the founder and our chief investment officer. And then Kirk and Nathan are also part of my team. And then on the final slide, the other thing I would tell you is that I think what has helped me all along the way through my whole entire life are my values. And these are my firm's values. And you can see they start with ESG. But these are also my personal values: to embrace humility and diversity of thought. Always learn something from everyone around you. They probably have more experience, or they just come with a different perspective, but learn from everybody and be humble. Strive for excellence with integrity and passion. Always seek to do your best, but do it with that passion, and always do it in the most upstanding way you can. And then the final one is to generate measurable impact. You know, really just go out there and leave something good behind. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Kim Blundy, and you can go right into the next slide. I'm with Caterpillar Inc., so heavy equipment, a little bit different than some of the other panelists, and sometimes not often thought of as a hugely sustainable company, because we do provide equipment for mine sites and things like that. But what attracted me to Caterpillar in 2007 was their sustainability platform. They were one of the first in their industry to do that, and I'll get into a moment why I was very, very intrigued by it. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background. We're not just bulldozers, tractors is what we call them. We're not just that, but heavy power. And I am in a facility that makes engine blocks specifically for cruise ships, for trains, for heavy equipment, a lot of backup power. So hospitals, UW's hospital, I would bet money, has Caterpillar gensets sitting there just in case they lose power. So it's a huge, huge portion of Caterpillar's overall portfolio is heavy power. But the cool thing about it is we were one of the first to have an electric drive tractor. So a lot of different sustainable offerings within our products, and then also on the other side of the house in operations. So you can go on to the next slide. A little bit about where I'm at. So I'm at Caterpillar's largest foundry, and it's one of the largest in the United States. And if you're not familiar, a foundry, we do pour iron, and we specifically, mine is focused on large engines. So you can see the different types of components that we make and the little schematic on industry served, which I spoke to. But really, it's about providing the kind of power that our customers need. Some of our offerings will run on natural gas, of course, diesel and gasoline, but also we're branching out into hydrogen. We can run a genset on solar power, on wind, all of the things. So you think about people, for instance, that are in very, very rural areas in the world, specifically third world countries. We can run a genset that would help pump water in the middle of nowhere simply by using solar power. So pretty cool stuff. My specific facility, you can see, is about 1,000 people working there, and I have the foundry side of the house. We do have a machine shop as well. So I have about 450 folks that work for me in the foundry. So if you go into the next slide, and that's really where the meat of my presentation is very quickly, I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of some kind of cool things. So there's a pour. We're pouring into a melter, so really big pours, and kind of, like 1900s, 1800s. A lot of things haven't changed in the foundry industry. So really cool. But what I would say, and if you start to look at my background, I've kind of done a variety of things within Caterpillar, and all of that has been to diversify what I know. I came to CAT from the USDA. So I was making an impact farmer by farmer within the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and decided for myself that I wanted to make a bigger impact. And Caterpillar is just that, because we have over 400 facilities worldwide. So when you make a small change in a large company, it's a global change oftentimes. Specifically, I was interested in the facility I am today is because it uses a lot of natural resources, an outstanding amount of natural resources. So I have a couple of pictures there. We have our own landfill. We are based in Illinois, and it's the only private landfill in the state of Illinois. But what we're doing with that, and it's all for sand. All it has is sand in it, and that's a byproduct of our molding processes. We're turning that into soil, which is actually where my master's degree lies, is in soil conservation. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, but long story short, the reason I've got a few other things on here, specifically like the fire brigade, is my biggest piece of advice is for people to keep an open mind. Because if you asked me when I was getting my master's degree at UW, if I would be working in a foundry about 20 years later, I would have told you there's no way. That's not sustainable, but it is. And part of it is, if I make, as a foundry manager, just a 1% change in the energy use of our melters, 1% equals 136 homes powered for an entire year. So our little foundry, is the equivalent of like 80,000 people's homes. It's a small city. That's how much energy is used to produce and make engine blocks, where we recycle metal and things like that. So if we make just a 1% change, it's a huge change. If we make a 10% change in energy conservation, it's a huge change. And so my little hybrid Honda is great, but it's not even close to what I can make on a daily basis working for my company in my one facility. So I guess I would leave you with that, is be open-minded when you're looking at your careers and what you're interested in. Don't discount something that you might not think is sustainable, because specifically from my point of view, sustainability is needed in all industries. And it's not just the sort of glossy ones that appear very green. It's the heavy equipment operators, the heavy equipment makers. We also need to be sustainable. And oftentimes that's where the big change comes from. Our shareholders want it. Our customers want it. Obviously, the public wants it as well. And it's the right thing to do. So I just, again, keep an open mind, because those jobs in sustainability specifically can be in a variety of places and where you might not least expect it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was excellent and very interesting. The question that is just been submitted right now, that theme is about career switching. And actually, almost all of you can probably speak to that, because none of you, except maybe Alexandra, went straight into a corporate sustainability job here. So what would be your advice for folks who wish to pivot quite purposefully, not just so falling into it, but pivot purposefully from one career path into a business sustainability career path? Any thoughts there?
I can jump in first, then you guys can build upon that. I would think about it in a couple ways. One is like wherever you want to go and the type of role that you want to have there, where you're at right now, are there some things within your existing company that you can do? You know, depending on how big of a stretch it is, maybe you have to make an interim step, right? So what are, speak to some of the folks that are in those industries. What are the skill set? What are the types of experiences that people are going to expect who are hiring in those roles? Maybe you can get them in your current company. Maybe you can get it kind of in that next company. The other way to do it is, if you're more on the business side, maybe you want to go back and get your MBA. That is, often a time when people do some switching. So they, do get some good experiences, go back, get their MBA, and then come out, and it allows you to kind of really pivot into a totally different direction. So those are a couple of the ways that you can make it happen.
And I would just add, I think as mentioned earlier, also, as many of us have moved to numerous jobs, just do it with intention, right? Lean in, understand where you can make an impact. And I thought, your point, Ben, was super strong on talk to people in the industry. But if you feel that you can make an impact, go in there and shine. And oftentimes that means, particularly when you're early in your career, you work a lot and you're in there early and you leave late and you do the work that you feel like you shouldn't have to because you've got this degree or that pedigree. It's a lot of the grind, but in the grind is where the nuggets come in, and that's where you really learn and you figure out what you're passionate about, what your customers, your future, all the things like that. So, being, really intentional about leaning into the opportunity and really absorbing every last bit of value that you can out of that will only set you up for your next step and then the step after that. So just really take advantage of the opportunities.
Any other panelists that want to chime in on that question, or? No? All right, let me move on to the next, and actually connects with something that Ben said. So the other question, another theme that stood out in those questions was what are the skills or experiences that employers in this space are looking for? So the key ones, the attractive ones that sort of make you a standout candidate for a job in, let's call it business sustainability, for lack of a better term. Because Ben, you mentioned that what are the experiences or attributes, right, that you need here to make this career switch? And that's exactly the question. What are those? So that's the question from the audience. What exactly are these attributes or experiences that are desirable at this point from that employers desire?
I think it depends on the type of company you're going for. So if you're going for a big multinational corporation, right? So if you and you want to do sustainability within a big company, they're going to look for a lot more expertise in specifically sustainability, whether it be more on the agricultural side, maybe it's the sourcing side. There can be any number of areas, and they will tend to have more experts. As you go smaller in the spectrum of businesses, you go from like having multiple experts or multiple people working on these things to maybe one person to, within Harmless, it kind of lives and breathes in each person, both on the revenue side. On the farms, I definitely have agronomists. Like they have very specific skills related to regenerative organic and compliance and things like that. But, for us, like if you want to get into a business, let's say the size of Harmless and, let's say sub 200 million, where you may not have a dedicated headcount who just does sustainability. For me, that passion has to live in each person. So what function are you, whether you're a marketing or you're a finance or whatever, the purpose that we live lives in each one of us. And I think it's really important to bring that to work every single day. When it comes to projects, when we did all of our mapping on like where greenhouse gas was, Fair for Life initiatives that we want to do here in the US versus just in Thailand, that comes from all functions, right? We open it up to like a team that then defines what it is, what we're going to do, because I expect that to live in every single person. So to me, being accountable to results, driving, having strong results in your past, a variety of experiences. Certainly when I'm looking at it from a small company, I like having big and small company experience because there's benefits to both. Being tenacious and literally living the passion. My team will technically, do the interviews based on just, technical capability and various different things. For me, it's, why Harmless? Why do you want to be here? And how are you really going to drive impact for our business?
Thank you. And anyone else wants to share thoughts on how can you stand out and secure that job?
I think I would echo Ben's comments. You do need to have a wide variety of experiences if you want to stand out specifically. And also, I would encourage, if there's something of interest to you in a specific field or area, that you reach out to people in that area, whether it be you reach out and find a person within that company that you can start get an informational interview with. Try to understand how that company might work and what they are looking for too, because it may be that you don't actually have what they're looking for yet, but you can build your way into that. And again, just being very, very passionate about what it is that you care about, and knowing that while a big company might have SD officers, a whole suite of people working on things, if you have these smaller companies or smaller facilities, you're often going to have one person that's doing multiple jobs. And so again, trying to keep an open mind that you might have a job with a title that's something entirely different, but that's not to say that you're not going to be working on sustainability initiatives, sustainability projects, conservation, and things like that.
A lot of head nodding from the other panelists. Do you have any other thoughts, additions there? Because
I mean, I would just say that I think that it is that passion and just having it in your DNA. And I work with a lot of companies and talk with them about their sustainability journeys. You can feel it when it is in the DNA of the executives running the businesses, and you can tell when you read their sustainability reports and listen to them talk about it, like it is in the DNA of the people who are there. And so just go with that passion and go with that drive and make an impact no matter what you're asked to do in those roles. I think that's how you can set yourself up well for success in sustainability.
push a little further here, a little more. So it almost sounds as if it doesn't really matter what you study, what your major is. Am I reflecting this correctly? No one has said it that way, but
I would agree.
Yeah. Like if you look at probably everyone that I've hired throughout the years, like I probably have hired very few marketers in marketing degrees. I've hired, like when you get into the numbers, I think it's breadth of experience. And someone with a different background can bring so much value to the team and to the organization. I don't think majors matter. I don't think, I mean, like specific schools and things like that. I think that doesn't matter as much. I think it's, be passionate about a thing, stand for something, come in, make an impact, as Cindy just said, and find ways to drive things forward. Don't get too caught up on, oh, this is my degree, I'm going to be blocked off over here. I don't think that's real life.
Results matter more than anything else. Tenacity, getting it, just doing it. Yes, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes things open a door, right, and help you, but after that, nothing else matters. It's about what you do. Can't say you're funny. You have to be funny.
And I think that diversity of thought is so important in any business today. And so when you bring people with different degrees, different backgrounds, different lived experiences, I mean, that is how you get great ideas to take anything forward. I mean, we really focus a lot on diversity of thought and perspective.
Alexandra, let Alexandra, what is your thought there? Because you're one who actually has a degree in this space, right?
Definitely.
Can
I
you?
think, yeah, I was going to say, I think like the biggest thing is being open for change. I think something that I've experienced in my short career so far is so much change within the space. And just be open to it, open to new experiences within sustainability, new focuses. Like I know, greenhouse gas is a focus, but also diversity and inclusion is a focus. So shifting your perspective on what's important based on the company, based on what they're focusing on too. And one other thing I was just going to say was about sorry, I forgot.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I have one more theme that emerged from those pre-submitted questions, and then we'll look at the live questions here. So that other theme was about impact. And the notion of how you've been able to create positive change, or if and how you have been able to create positive change in corporate sustainability in your work in this field. And I know a couple of you guys spoke very directly to this already, but I don't know if you want to, and maybe the importance of that too, right? To sort of make you excited about work. But some of you have spoken to it directly, others not so much yet. I don't know if you want to add anything there with this to this question or to your answers. Nothing.
I'll build upon it, and then I saw there was another question, and I'll kind of start to answer another question that I saw in the feed. To me, like, especially in my role, right? So I'm running a for-profit business that is designed to drive positive impact for people and planet. And one does not exist without the other, in my mind, right? And so, one of the questions was asking about like, how do you, when it's not important to a business, how do you drive impact, right? When they don't care about it, they just care about sales and profit. So many of the things that you do from a people and planet, I can't say all of the things, but so many of the things you do actually have really positive impact on your P&L. And so I think don't lose, excuse me, don't lose sight of that, and sometimes frame it in those terms, right? So when I made the decision to start transitioning the company to regenerative organic, it was definitely, people and planet were part of it, right? I wanted to raise incomes for farmers by at least 10%, and I wanted to drive positive climate impact. But make no mistake, and I don't, apologize for this, I also believe that it's going to drive better yields, better long-term supply for us, in addition to the farmers. So from a business standpoint, we're spending millions on driving regenerative. But I believe, and we're starting to see the data now as we have more and more farms in regenerative, and we're collecting the data year over year, we're seeing positive yield results. I'm also looking at biochar, which is essentially through pyrolysis, you basically take the coconut husk, burn it in a non-oxygen environment, you're left with basically carbon, you mix it in with compost, put it in the farms. This is going to cost us millions and millions of dollars to start to do. but it drives yields up like 30%. And it's really positive for farmers and immensely positive from an environment standpoint. That almost single-handedly could flip us to climate positive. But it's not just people and planet. Those are great, and I want to do those, but also finding those win-wins, and how do you translate it into the business case and why you would invest it and what it means for long-term, business continuity and sales and profit.
I think that's such an important impact on, like, similar, like, you're only going to do things that are going to drive your business forward, right? None of us are in the business of feel good necessarily. It's hard to pay employees off of feel good, but like certain examples, like similar, like when we increased our minimum wage to at least $20, and because we wanted our local community and people in the traditional restaurant system to be able to have a place to work with respectable income. That made recruiting a lot easier. It made our employees more sticky, so we had lower turnover, so we had fewer mistakes, so we had more positive customer experiences. So like all these things, it is finding, okay, if we do this now, there will be, the bet is in many of the situations, an outsized positive impact on the business and the bottom line. I don't know, and I can't even think of many scenarios where people have tried something that is actually better for people or planet and then realize, oh, this is actually horrible for either employee retention or customer acquisition or customer retention. Like, if you lean into it and you show up as a brand, as a company, and bring your team and your customers along, like that appreciation goes so far that doesn't get muddled in the positive impact it has on the business. And then hopefully, if it's done right, it also has a very good impact on the planet, right? So never losing sight of, you can't have a positive impact on the planet if you're out of business. So profits come first, and then what is the takeaway from that?
Thank you. Then you mentioned there was a question you wanted to answer to that was posted in the chat or Q&A, and I didn't want to take that opportunity away from you.
No, I think I kind of answered it. Well, I did. I actually wrote an answer to one of them while we were waiting, and I didn't realize it'd move it over. So if anybody wants to add to that on the answered questions, and then I noticed there was another one. So I think I kind of hit it.
All right. So I'm scrolling here through some of the Q&As that were on the questions that were put into the Q&A, and I'm looking a little bit at the upvoting signal to see which are the ones that are maybe the most pressing ones. One of them here is, many companies are investing in employing new positions for sustainability right now, and actually since the 90s. Do you see that private corporations in 10-20 years will still be as eager to keep their operation or management teams for sustainable endeavors? So still have, as I read it, still have these chief sustainability officers position and teams.
Yes, I think they absolutely will. And many of the panelists have touched on it. It's good business sense to be more sustainable. You're talking about resources and cost reduction oftentimes. Sometimes it takes new technology to make something to meet a return on investment, so you can actually invest in it. So that, in that way, yes, they will be there. It might look a little different in 10 or 20 years. I think it'll become more and more embedded, which is kind of what we've been touching on. For instance, my role, and in fact, I asked, are you sure you want me? I'm not a corporate sustainability person. I'm in a corporation and I work on sustainability projects, but I'm trying to make my specific facility more efficient and more profitable, which is more sustainable overall. So the answer was yes, but I guess that's the point, is I think it will become more and more and more embedded, because we're over time going to have to do more and more with less. That there's just no other way around it. Natural resources are only, there are finite resources. And so we just need to be very cognizant of that. And if you want a long-term sustainable company that's going to be successful for generations, for decades, then you're going to have to build that into the DNA, which is one of the panelists was talking about too. And that comes with every single employee thinking in that same way.
Thank you. Ben, don't quite answer the question yet. I see you responding to one of the questions that was posted, because then it'll go away again. It's a good question in the sense of this question here that's posted is, can you speak about experiences attempting to affect change in a company when sustainability is not a core priority for leadership? So really, we are still talking about careers and sustainability. So far, we have spoken about them more explicitly, where you take a sustainability related position in a company and find your path that way, right? But this is another path, like affecting sustainability within the company, creating sustainability within the company, right? And then becoming involved in business sustainability that way. So any thoughts on that question?
So you busted me. That was the one I was tangentially answering them. I was like, well, what if I didn't do it justice? So then I started typing the response, and now I get to answer it anyway. So what I was saying is, understand what's important to that business, right? And then think about like the goals you have from a sales and profit, whatever it may be, and start translating what you're doing into those ultimate terms, right? If the things that you think are important that can really drive impact does that positively impact sales? Does it positively impact costs? Or, and maybe not directly there, or does it impact employee morale, which drives better retention, which saves costs on recruiting and turnover and stuff like that? Start framing things in a way that that addresses the fundamentals of the business. And I think, going back to something I said earlier, so much of what you do in responsible business ultimately leads to a stronger business. And so I think there's so much that you're doing ties back, because I think generally speaking, we all want to have, positive impacts in our communities and an environment and stuff like that. That drives employee retention, and happiness and performance and all those types of things. So I think just trying to tie it back to whatever it is that you may be interested in or that you want to drive impact in your organization, how does it tie back to the business? And then the final thing I'd say there is just thinking about, what does it mean in the competitive environment that you're in? I don't know what kind of industry or what kind of, what you're doing, but does that give you some sort of competitive advantage, either with consumers or if you're with B2B? Does that give you something that helps differentiate you, that helps win a business or, a project, so that if you're in consulting or, I don't know what it's related to, but, finding ways to give competitive advantage or driving sales and profit for your organization.
Yeah, something that came to mind when I saw this question was just like the grassroots part of it. I know, like when I interned at a company, there really wasn't a lot of sustainability initiatives that were embedded from leadership down. And so we created like a green team, and it was in the office, and it was any employee could join, and it was something that leadership did notice. And then we ended up, having a meeting to kind of talk about some of the things that we wanted to do around the office, around the company, to make it more green. So from a different perspective, it could be just a grassroots approach instead of, if it's not really coming from leadership, start with the employees, and they'll notice at some point when all their employees are, caring about something too.
A great example in consulting right out of undergrad. We didn't recycle or do anything in the office. I felt it was important. And we had a happy hour one day, and I set up the happy hour, but I made all the executive leadership team. I gave them all the orange jackets, whatever, and bins of garbage. And this is back, I'm old. Look at all the gray hair. So this is back in the late 90s. And I had them actually do, test them timed recycling. What is compost? Well, it wasn't really compost back then. It was recycling and regular. And it was just a good, fun learning experience for all of us, because frankly, there were some things that I didn't, prior to setting up that event, didn't totally know. But it's just a fun, find fun ways. It can just be a social thing where you're learning and teaching people. So there's lots of different ways where you can start to have positive impact.
Thank you. Let me pull together two other questions that have popped up. One was probably for our newer grads or soon to be grads. Those in particular are wondering, given that you've really emphasized the importance of experience, lots of experiences, diverse experiences, this will be like the in for the job that you want. What about those who don't have many experiences yet because they're just graduating? So how can new grads get into the market and or the field. And that sort of connects a little bit to the other question that I saw there, which asked about, is there any particular conferences, network events, something like that, that you believe would really add value here for those who seek to break into the field?
I can maybe start on that one because I know I'm the closest to it. So I can kind of tell you what I kind of did. First of all, I mean, UW-Madison has a ton of opportunities. I know there's like a responsible business club that gave me exposure. We had like consulting teams. Some of you probably who are on the call are on it, so I probably don't need to explain it too much, but we had like consulting teams where we worked with a local business in the Madison area. And that was on my resume for sure when I got my first job. Another thing that was on my resume was one of my capstone courses. We worked with the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council and helped them improve their program. And that was on my resume too. So I think sometimes thinking of things that maybe aren't jobs or something you're getting paid or an internship specifically, but things that you are doing that really do count and show that you're practicing this type of work. And I think a lot of in the Madison area or in that school, there's a ton of opportunities.
I'll build on that. I love all those ideas, right? And those are all great. If you're in a company, let's say you get in a job, like, listen, as leadership, if somebody raises their hand and they want to take on a side hustle or a side job on a project within the organization, and you're still going to do all the stuff you do, that's another way, right? If you want to start getting experience in an area where you want to actually fully operate in the future, are there ways you can take on side projects that would be important or would be beneficial to the organization and start getting those experiences? The other is like, are there outside nonprofits or organizations where you can volunteer, where you can go get some experience, where you maybe lead a project for them, or you do something like that? So yes, you have your kind of day-to-day job, but now you're starting to get some experience either within the company doing some side stuff, which you can really kind of bring to life a lot more on your resume and when you do interviews, as well as like outside the organization. Certainly the conferences and stuff, I think those are good from a understanding. Companies will love to see that. Also the practical execution, business, tangible things that you can do within a business.
And to add on that, I would suggest take the job, right? Like I think part of what I see in hiring is there's different expectations on the level of the job that someone might be looking for when they don't have tons of work experience. So it's more important is getting your foot in the door, taking the job that you may feel you're overqualified for all the right reasons, but getting in the door, and then that gives you the opportunity to show that you can make an impact. That gives you the opportunity to actually grab that project that you're volunteering for, or whatever the case is, as opposed to trying to be like, oh, I'm going to hold out for something better. I think that's where a lot of people stumble around a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's get your foot in the door, especially if it's a company that's very interesting to you and that you're going to be passionate about. That is key. But also, I think Ben mentioned it, volunteering. If you and specifically trying to get, I always look for leadership roles that they've had within volunteering experiences. A lot of your interview questions are going to be asked in such a way and asked about your experiences. And to be honest, we're looking for those leadership traits right off the bat in an interview. And that will just start to bleed through once you get that job. But you can get leadership experience without being a leader in a company. And that's how you're going to start to drive more of the change that you want to drive, is having those kinds of experiences, which you could get in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and I was just going to echo the volunteer thing, especially because that's where you have the opportunity to be with a lot of like-minded, mission-aligned people. That's where you get noticed for, your passion about doing good. And so I think that's a great idea. And the other thing I'll add from an investment standpoint is, like, I'm a CFA, and the CFA has just added a level 4 exam, which is for you're looking at sustainability in the investment business too. So that's kind of a new avenue toward sustainable investing.
Yeah, and there are some other new like sustainability credentials. There's SASB, or I think it's called like the FSA is a new credential that you can take, and you can take it now. It doesn't matter when, and that would be a really good asset coming into the workforce too.
All right, I just froze for a moment here, but I'm back. And we are at 6:30. We have a ton more questions in the Q&A, which suggests to me we need to do this again. So we will. But for now, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Alexandra, Cindy, Ben, Kim, and Aaron. This was an incredibly helpful discussion. So get some insights into these career paths and how to go about them. All the audience, please remember to fill out the evaluation survey, and thank you for joining us tonight.